Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first cake decorating video. Today we're going to be doing my birthday cake. Every year I usually like to do my own birthday cake because it's kind of the one moment of the year where I can kind of do whatever I feel like doing rather than the same cakes I always end up getting. And I can do something like really out of the box and really creative. And this year I had a really cool idea in mind. Now, if you know me, I'm kind of a big horror fan, and there was this wedding cake that I saw that I'll throw a picture here. And I've been wanting to do something like that for a very long time now. I don't know who the artist is for this cake, and if I end up finding out who it is, I'll tag them in the description box below. So yeah, with that being said, let's get to it, and I'll show you kind of my process. So usually I always like to draw a little sketch of generally what I want. For this I didn't go into too much detail since it was a simple cake. I just wanted to get kind of where I was going to carve out some pieces on the top tier and how I was going to do the swags and use the swags as the eyes and the mouth as well. Just general placement is what I was looking for here. So now I have my design and I can move on to the cakes. This is a lemon cake. This is the same cake that my boyfriend made in the previous video that's actually on my birthday. This isn't the one that he baked. I baked these. Now I froze these overnight, that way I could maneuver them a little bit more, and it helps me get an idea of what the cake will look like when I'm stacking, because otherwise it would kind of fall apart as I keep moving them because they are so soft. Okay, so now I have all of my cakes that I'm going to use today. I do have this extra one. I was originally going to do a 3-tier cake. I decided a 2-tier cake looked a little bit better. And I'm just going to keep this to the side in case they actually need it. Essentially, this is how each tier is going to look. This is what I mean by this can give me a visual as to what the cake might look like when it's all done. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and carve them out. Since I did do a bigger cake on top, smaller cake at the bottom, I think this one starts off as a 10-inch and then it goes down to a 6-inch. This one starts as a 6-inch and goes down to a 4-inch cake. So I have a 6-inch and a 4-inch board at the bottom of both of them. I'm going to take another board, put that on top, and flip these over. I'm going to make sure that they're all centered. And then I can shave it off a little bit. I'm probably not going to do too much shaving. Ideally, I think for these you want to have like a little bit more cake, like out more. I probably should have done like 3 6-inch layers, but I didn't want to waste too much product. But essentially, this is going to give you a good guide as to how much you need to cut off. Like I said, probably should have done more, or done bigger cakes, but I didn't want to waste product. And then we're going to do the same thing with this one. I think this time I'm just going to leave it flip this way because I think this is easier than the other way. Alright, that looks pretty good as well. I'm going to set that to the side. And that is it for the carving, and we can move on to the filling. Alright, so now I have everything I need for the filling. After I filled up a bag with buttercream, I'm going to cut a little bit of the tip off. I'm not going to worry about a tip for now since you don't really need it. I'm going to take a little bit of the buttercream, just put a little dab at the bottom, and that kind of helps secure the bottom tier. Take the top layers off, and then you're going to take the buttercream and make a ring on the edge. That kind of like to double up a little bit on it. Kind of like a layer and a half of buttercream. And then I'm going to take my raspberry filling, cut a little bit off of that. Now I could have made this. It's my birthday and I didn't want to stress out too much over having to make more stuff. So I just bought it. And I got this at my local cake supply shop. And you're just gonna take it and fill that inside. That's good. Then I'm gonna take my spatula and just even that out a little bit. That should be good. And we're gonna take the next layer, stack that right on top. And then just gonna repeat the process. Alright, now that this is done, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in the freezer so it can set up the buttercream and set up the inside and make it firmer. That way, if I go to ice it right now, it might like move around a little bit and I don't want it to do that. And now I'm going to go ahead and repeat that same process with the smaller cake. Now once those cakes are nice and chilled, I'm going to take another bag of buttercream and just pipe on that buttercream while I'm turning the turntable and just going up the sides of the cake. This to me is the easiest way to put buttercream on the cake and then just smoothing it out. It's quicker, it's cleaner. Yeah, this is just generally the way that I like to do this. Now you will see as I'm spinning this cake, one side is sticking out a little bit more. That wasn't necessarily part of the plan, but I am going to end up using this later in my favor. And just using a larger offset spatula, I'm just using that to smooth out the tops and the sides of the cake and filling in all of those gaps and scraping off the excess as well, and using that excess later to help fill those gaps. And using the same technique I was using before to crumb coat the cake, I'm going to do the same with the top coat of the cake using this lovely, beautiful blue that I was able to create. Now because of the angle of this cake, I think I wasn't able to smooth out the cake entirely using the offset spatula, and so I brought out one of my favorite tools that I used for sculpted cakes, which is just, it's like a piece of plastic acetate or something that you use for icing, and it's able to really smooth things out, and it gives me the exact texture that I want. Once I was done icing the cake, I stacked and put dowels in them, especially all the way through to keep it stable. And now I was ready to carve. Right here, what I am doing is carving what I was considering the brow of the cake to give him that kind of angry face. And for the mouth, I took a skewer to just use to mark out the area that I wanted the mouth, getting it to a point that I was happy with the shape of the mouth before I did any kind of carving. Now I mentioned before that the cake was a little offset. One side leaned out a little bit more, and the front where the mouth is the side that leans out more, and it kind of helped give that look of menace and that the cake was kind of coming alive. Once both the top and the mouth were carved out, I iced and smoothed out the top. And then I took some black icing for the mouth and piped that in. And I tried using an angled spatula, but I couldn't find my smaller one. And I was having a bit of an issue trying to smooth it out, and I was being too much of a perfectionist and wanted it smoothed out as much as I could. I ended up taking that other plastic spatula that I was using before, and instead of using the flat side, I was using the rounded side of it, and I found that that worked perfectly to get on the inside of that mouth. Now that all of the icing is finally out of the way, we can move on to decorating. Here I am using an Ateco 68 tip that I'm going to use for the swags on the bottom and top tier. I'm going to start with the mouth first and doing a back and forth motion to help create that ribbon effect. And then continuing that same shape around the cake, I'm going to start with the top of the swag and then do the second one later. I did mark out with the skewer where all of these were going to be, just to try to keep it even. I did have one spot that was a little smaller than the rest, but it still looked great in the end. Now here's where I messed up a little bit. Here I am using a lighter shade of purple and an Ateco 18 tip. And I created little rosettes that went on the tips of where the swags were. I later did a shell underneath to make a little like teardrop shape that connected to the rosette. I should have started with the teardrop first and then done the rosettes, and it would have looked a lot cleaner. Moving on to the top tier, using that same purple icing in the tip as before. I'm being very specific on how I'm doing these swags for the eyes, trying to get the bottom of the swag to be in a certain spot to kind of help create those angry eyes that this cake needs to have. And then just going around and continuing the same piping, but this time doing one line rather than two lines. And then taking white icing and a small rounded tip, I worked on the eyes, generally kind of just doing an outline to give me an idea, filling that in, and then adding more specifically at the bottom of the eye to help create that exaggerated look to help give off the emotion I was trying to create with this cake. And then taking this tool that I found that you're supposed to use for fondant and gum paste, I used it to help smooth out the eyes without damaging any of the piping at the top. And then taking yellow icing and a small star tip, I piped on a shell border around the eyes and then piped in just one star into each of the rosettes at the bottom tier, and then continued that swag around the top tier of the cake. Now I didn't get a good shot of this because my hand was kind of in the way, but I repeated the teardrop shape with the rosettes, but doing it in the correct order this time, doing the teardrop first and then the rosette at the top. And then taking the darker shade of purple and an Ateco 21 tip, I piped on a shell border going one direction for the bottom tier and the other direction for the top tier. And then I went back over the top of those shell borders in the Ateco 18 with a lighter shade of purple, and just piped on another shell border just on top of the other shell border. And taking that same dark purple and tip as before, I tried to create what were supposed to be eyebrows, but in the end I wasn't getting the emotion that I wanted, so I did add on another row of this like swirl border that I'm doing just below it, and then piping on the same kind of swirl in the lighter purple, and that really helped give me like angry eyebrows. And then for the top border, kind of mimicking what we were doing with the bottom borders, I am doing a larger shell border going around, and then creating a second row of the same border on the inside of that border, and then going on top of those two borders in the middle with the lighter color purple and the smaller star tip. And now going in with a small tip and black icing, I created the pupils of the eyes. I did try to add some yellow on top of the pupil to try to give it maybe like a little bit more emotion, but I didn't like it, so I scraped it off. And it was at this point where I started to realize how goofy looking he was starting to look rather than menacing looking, and that's where I decided to add more to his eyebrows and help convey the emotion I wanted. Now for my cake monster's teeth, I took white fondant and just rolled it around in my hand, made one side a little bit thicker and the other side as sharp as a point that I could get. A big tip for you is make a lot more like I did than what you think you'll use, because I did let these sit overnight and I wasn't sure how many I was actually going to need. I think I ended up only using about half, but it was still nice to have all of the extra and the different sizes and shapes just to give myself some options. I did make some larger ones, and then I did make some smaller ones. The big ones I used mainly for the middle of the mouth, and then kind of progressing it to these smaller ones as it went to the corners of the mouth. And then after letting these dry overnight, the next day it was time to assemble them. I started in the middle of the cake. Like I said before, I used the bigger teeth for the middle of the mouth, and then progressively made them smaller. I did have a couple instances, since I did leave the cake in the fridge overnight, the icing was a little hard, and pushing the teeth in were breaking off some of the piping, but I worked it in my favor and just kind of put the teeth on top of that and made it look like it was kind of growing outside of the piping. And then essentially at this point, the last step I had to do was take some piping gel that I dyed red and just paint those onto the tips of the teeth to make them look all nice and bloody. And that was basically it. Now that all the decorating was done, all I did was add the candles, and when my guests first walked in, this is the side of the cake that they saw. And once they were all here, I just turned the cake around to show its true side.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making this cake. This is probably one of my favorite cakes I've ever made, and I hope I get to make more in the future. Unfortunately, I didn't get to get any more footage or like an end footage with the cake itself, because that final shot of the cake I did already have guests over, and I didn't want to have to film around them, and I didn't want them to have to worry about me filming. But everyone did enjoy it. It was a great cake, and I had a great night. I had a great birthday. So thank you again so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button. I will have more videos in the future. I have lots of ideas, and I'm already getting ready for Halloween. So I'll be making a lot more videos in the future. So yeah, stay tuned, and we'll make some more magic here.